for the Cambridge.
Faulkner in pole position, Morgan Dempsey and John Keeney. But this is Dan Rooney. Nice close-up of Dan Rooney concentrating on the lights. This is a moment of great tension before the race starts. There are the big ones, the 1600cc cars. Peter Faulkner, very good on pole position. There's Richard Baird in the middle of the front row amongst the 1350cc's. And away they go, and a beautiful start. All the front row getting off together. The little 850cc that is in there. Richard Baird challenging on the outside from Dan Rooney down the inside. Rooney gets it. Richard Baird's in second place. Then we have Nigel Burgess, and then they stream through Telecom and off down to the back of the course. Now the 40-second wait before we get the second grid coming off the line. But there's no doubt about it, at the moment it's Dan Rooney being shadowed by Richard Baird, and then the Davrian beginning to show there on the outside, Jeff Farminghoe.
Yes, and I noticed, Alan, that there's a mixture of tyres out there. It's drying slightly, and the drivers had a choice of tyres. And it's away, and that's the second rim. That car getting sideways to the back was George Crozier, but it's Morgan Dempsey who got the jump on Peter Faulkner, and that red and white car is John Keeney. So Dempsey from the middle of the front row and Keeney from the outside have got the jump on Peter Faulkner, and around the outside goes George Crozier, and if he can hold in there, he'd squeeze into third place. So Faulkner, the pole position man, Alan, right from pole position back to fourth, and meanwhile back with the 1350s we still have Dan Rooney still leading Richard Baird in the stiletto as a gaggle comes right into Dunlop there. Dan Rooney in the little blue and yellow imp, followed by the stiletto with a spinner there at Dunlop, but Rooney putting a nice gap at the moment. This is the second, the big boys, and it's Dempsey coming under pressure. Now John Keeney has driven around the outside of people here before, and I think he's going to do it again. Dempsey is not the man that'll back off there, but John has a habit of getting down the outside, Alan, and sticking the nose in the S's and getting in by them.
Well, indeed, it was Farminghoe who spun off. We're back with the 1300cc's, and we see that Dan Rooney is pulling away slightly from Richard Baird now in the Exide car there in second place. But this is the real battle amongst the fast ones. And there's no doubt it's Morgan Dempsey, John Keeney coming for a second attempt. Look at Faulkner coming up in the background. He was the man that was in pole position, and it all went away from him at the start. But Keeney, and there's a piece of debris in the middle of the track there. They all managed to avoid it, but that could easily have caused a puncture. George Crozier in third place. Faulkner right behind him looking for a way past the little rear-wheel drive Metro. Meanwhile, the 1350cc's, and it's a lot closer because Richard Baird is right up the gearbox of the little imp of Dan Rooney now, and in fact going to challenge.
Yes, and it's down the inside. Baird went in wide and came out close under braking. He's having a look down the inside. Depends if he has the legs now. No swapping out. Rooney moving over to protect that inside line for the corner, but Baird definitely made up ground there, and these two are having a battle. And it's Keeney tried that maneuver again, but as I said, Dempsey is not a man to let him through, and just wouldn't. I would say John was taking a chance, and Dempsey spins coming out, so the both of them have spun. They're like beginning to catch the back markers. So it's George Crozier now, the leader of the big class, George Crozier. Keeney there just getting by Morgan Dempsey, so it's George Crozier now leading the big class. That's John Keeney, the one who spun. George Crozier in your picture there, lapping one of the slower cars, the midget in the 30-50 class. Peter Faulkner, number 44, who is our pole position man. He is going to have to settle down. I don't think Peter has had a wet race since he bought this car. This is an MD-88 built by Morgan Dempsey. Now they're getting into the traffic, Alan, and this is where the good driver can pick his spots to get the advantage.
Well, that was quite extraordinary because Dempsey getting through in that incident and obviously being unsettled enough to spin himself as it was all happening in the same corner. We noticed a lot of bodywork missing from that particular Hillman imp as it gets lapped by the really quick ones who are now beginning to make their way right up through the field. So George Crozier, Peter Faulkner there in the Morgan Dempsey special built by him, and here we go back with the overall race leaders, and it's still Dan Rooney. Richard Baird still holding on, getting a little bit sideways as he came out of Telecom that time, throwing that low-level imp around the place.
And we're back with the big ones, and it's George there with the Metro on the inside, and that is Peter Faulkner. Peter closing up. The MD is definitely that little bit quicker down the straight. Now Peter's going to have to tuck in and have a look at the outside of George. Look at the inside. He's going to have to unsettle him. George, no easy man to get by, moving out, making that road very narrow for Peter. Peter early on the brakes there will turn in behind him. because they've got to lap this Mini number 33 there, one of the 1350 cars. That's Joe Moran. But he's through very twitchy there, Peter, as they go through the left-hander. Now Peter's going to have to sit back and work out where he has the legs of George, where is the place, and this is the place, because he's just powered by him down the straight into Budweiser. This is where the superior power of the MD, the Morgan Dempsey 88, shows, and it's down to George now to do the same to Peter.
And I'm looking at Keeney closing in on these two. So John Keeney, after his spin, is beginning to really make an impression in the TMC. So the Phillips Business Systems TMC, look at his, right in shot. Now, has Crozier got a problem? He shouldn't have been that easy to take.
The battle in the 1350 class, the overall leads of Baird having a look at the outside. Dan Rooney closing the doors, they turn into Aircell. Again, as we can see, and that is the battle for the bigger class, and you can see that Keeney is right on the bumper of Crozier. So the three now, Peter Faulkner in the lead, and John Keeney's got down the inside of Peter, went in late and turned in. So now we have John Keeney, a man who has won many times before on television. In fact, he won the first ever race here in Mondello in 1968, and he is up into second place after that spin. Now Peter would love to win on television. He's had his maiden win here in the MD88. He's got to settle back, look in the mirror, see he has the gap, and drive his lines. Jeff Fairleyhoe there in the Davrian. He's a mid-runner in the 1350 class. And there's the race leader. This is Dan Rooney in the little blue and yellow imp as he dives up the hill, keeping that outside line close for him to keep Baird away. Baird obviously has the legs on him in a straight line, or looks to have. He's having a look down the inside, but Dan will move towards the Armco. He will close that gap. A little dive there as if he missed a gear, but no, he has enough to keep himself thinking. Keeney back, looking at a look at Peter Faulkner. That's where they had the incident with Morgan Dempsey. Now Peter knows this trick of John's, and he's one of the few drivers that can do it, where he can drive around the side of the S's. Peter tied into the traffic there. John can sit back and take his chance and watch his chance to catch Peter.
And it's very slippery, this track still, particularly at places like just outside Dunlop. And look at the traffic they got to contend with. Faulkner easing his way through, punching his way through some of the slower cars, and Keeney's held up, and Faulkner, that it was just what he needed. Look at the seconds ticking away as the TMC desperately looks for ways around those minis. And Faulkner again gets clear of another one before he gets down to Budweiser. He must have made up about 8 seconds in that maneuver. Blue flags waving everywhere to tell the backmarkers to get out of the way. The quick men are coming through.
There's our race leaders. Dan Rooney overall, and you can see that Jeff Fairley, who's beginning a kind of spinner there, number 41. That is Michael Whelan, spinner 41 now. Michael Whelan spun away in 4th place, but it's still Dan Rooney. And there's Faulkner, the up to 1600cc leader at the moment, who is catching these 1350 cars all the time. Keeney has got away from those bunch, and Rooney, our overall race leader again. Let us remind you that we have 2 classes here, the up to 1350, the over 1350. Rooney there, number 14, is leading the race overall. Peter Faulkner here, number 44, is the man who started 40 seconds behind, and he's got to catch the grid of 14 of them, past them to win the overall race. Battle now in the background there for 2nd place.
And in fact, going through is into 2nd place he has. It's Michael Whelan in the Davrian Chrysler. 2 Davrians out in this race. Fairleyhoe spinning off earlier, but he lost it again. He lost it at Budweiser. All that good work gone to naught, and there's no doubt about it that Richard Baird is still with it.
And in the meantime, Peter Faulkner is under more pressure from John Keeney. John has made up this ground. Now, this is where he can do it. He got the drag coming up out of the S's. This time John will have the legs of him down. He's never been that far. He can come all the way around the outside. In fact, he doesn't. He can turn in before the corner. There'll be no bumping or boring. Our race leader again, number 14, Dan Rooney. That's our overall race leader. And a battle royal there, and it's nearly spun. Michael Whelan getting very, very sideways. The battle there for the 1600s. That's John Keeney now ahead of Peter Faulkner. Here is the tow. Rooney coming down to the braking area as he turns in. That's 1st, 2nd and 3rd overall. And in the background is that, yes, That is John Keeney. Now you can see the gap between the smaller class and the larger class. They are now running in 4th and 5th place.
And what alone is going to happen when the really quick cars, who will just be coming over the brow of the hill any second now, catch up these battling trio. The flag marshals are going to have to be right on the ball here, the Irish Motor Racing Marshals Club, because here comes John Keeney. There goes Peter Faulkner. Faulkner now sadly dropping back a little bit. But there, and it looks like we have a new leader, overall leader, Richard Baird, I think. Baird is the new overall leader as John Keeney comes up, leading the 1600cc class. And there is one of the back markers, number 88. We've seen him in all kinds of problems, Ray Fitzpatrick.
There's Richard Baird. He's now the overall leader. Dan Rooney under increasing pressure from Whelan up the inside. Dan Rooney demoted to 3rd place, but did you see that red and white car in the background? That is the 4th place man, John Keeney. That is the difference. The 1st, 3rd, 4th, 5th are all in a line down the main straight. Peter Faulkner there, he is in 5th place. There is our leader, Richard Baird. That Mini is a back marker. Ignore him, not altogether, but ignore him from your places. There is John Keeney up into 4th place. He's really now on the tail of Dan Rooney. The slower Mini there, number 33. He is being lapped at the moment. You can see Keeney out on the outside. He's got to get through this traffic. We're on the last lap and he's up into 3rd place, Keeney. He's fighting for 2nd place as they go into Budweiser, and unfortunately Peter Faulkner has lost out on this. He's now into 2nd place, John Keeney, with less than half a lap to go. It is John Keeney in 2nd place with Richard Baird leading.
And this handicap system of the 40-second start certainly giving us some tremendous excitement here. Can Richard Baird hold off in his little 1350cc car? We're just waiting for him to appear. That's a back marker. There's the race leader. There's Keeney with all that extra power coming up the hill behind him. It's Richard Baird down into Dunlop the first time. There's Keeney, the 2nd place man, just chasing him. And Baird gets it sideways. Keeney's going to sprint towards the line. It's a superb finish. Keeney gets it. Richard Baird, of course, is also a winner in his class. But what tremendous entertainment that Telecom GT has given us. So, John Keeney, despite a spin, takes victory in the Telecom Leinster Trophy meeting, one of his